back in 2010, I can't believe it's been 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to spend 14 days in Israel. And so I don't know what pictures up there, so just the Whirly, Swirly. Just outside of the old city of Jerusalem, near the Lion's Gate, is the traditional birthplace of Mary, the mother of Jesus. So this is called the Church of St. Anne. It's named for her mother. The most incredible acoustics I've ever sung in. So much so, you know how it is when you stand in the very center of the dome upstairs and how it sounds so acoustically perfect? You can stand anywhere in that building and it's exactly like that. I mean, choir after choir to wait in line to go in there and sing. Right next to it, you can see where the pool of Bethsaida was, or as we call it nowadays, Bethesda. I don't know how that switched around, but which actually means house of mercy. Now, let me see. I can't get it. This is what it looked like then. Now go to the next one. This is a picture I actually took. That they're excavating it and trying to do it. And then one more, you can kind of see the depth of this. Down there, that they're doing all this excavation to do it. But this is where the pool was. That tradition was that every now and again the waters would stir. So I don't know if there's some sort of whirlpool down in there with a spring or what. But tradition was the angels would come and stir the pool, and the first person to get in the pool would be healed. Okay? So it was a medicinal thing. Tradition, people would jump in quickly when the water started to stir. So many people of various diseases waited on these 5 porches, waiting for the water to stir. Like waiting in a hospital to be called into the emergency room. Now, we're going to read the scripture, but we're going to do it in a different way this morning. Can you go to that next script? Okay. This was when we did this 3 years ago. And there's Jeff on the front row waving his thing. And there's a couple other people you might notice there. Carol is there.
I was there.
And Cece is there. And so when I found that picture, I wanted to include that there this morning. And Marlene. Yeah. So let's go to the next one. And this is what we're going to say. It's you all are going to be the cheerleaders. Okay? So we're going to practice this. So do it however you want to do it. So ready? Let's try it. Here we go. Whirly, swirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go, Jesus! Last time we did this, we had first-time visitors. They walked in during this part. So Anna's going to come up here and join me, and we're going to do some cheers. So what's going to happen is you're going to do that every time you hear one of us say something about the water swirling. Okay? So every time you hear that, we're going to interrupt, and the cheerleaders are going to go. Are we ready?
Ready.
The Jewish leaders in Jesus' day were very careful to follow the rules. In fact, they were more concerned about following the rules than about being kind to people.
Now in Jerusalem, there was a special pool. And at certain times, an angel would swirl the waters around.
Whirly, whirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go,
Yes, now, oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the stage direction.
Ah.
This happens sometimes. Now, the pool was called Bethesda. I want to say Bethsaida.
However you want to say it.
And there were a whole group of people waiting there for the angel to swirl the waters around.
Whirly, swirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go, Jesus! Woo!
Jesus was walking past when he saw a man who's been sick for 38 years.
38 years, that's a lot of sick days.
No kidding. Jesus went over to him and said, "Sir, do you want to get better?"
The man responded, "Of course, what do you think? But I don't have anybody to help me get in when the waters go all swirly."
Whirly, swirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go, Jesus!
So the sick man continued, "I'm never the first one in. Somebody always beats me. It's not fair. Life is not fair. I think I'm going to go eat worms. I've been stuck here for 38 years.
And Jesus said, "Well, then get up, pick up your sleeping bag and walk." At once, the man stood up and was healed.
The man said, "I'm a little stiff, though. I have been sitting there for 30 years. Did I mention that?"
Some Jewish leaders saw the man carrying the sleeping bag. One Pharisee said, "Hey, it's against the rules to carry that sleeping bag around."
The sick man replied, "Why is that?"
The Pharisee was only too happy to say, "It's the day of rest. You're supposed to be resting, not camping."
To which the healed man said, "I've been resting for 38 years. And besides, the guy who healed me, he's the one who told me to pick it up. So if I'm in trouble, it's all his fault."
The Pharisee was outraged. He asked the healed man, "Where did he heal you?"
"In my legs? Where do you think?"
The Pharisee did not think that was funny and said, "No, I mean, where around here did he heal you?"
"Oh, over there by that stupid pool that goes all swirly."
Whirly, swirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go, Jesus!
The man said, "I hadn't been there for 38 years. Did I mention that?"
The Pharisee asked, "But who healed you anyway?"
How am I supposed to know?
The Pharisee was appalled. He said, "He healed you and you don't even know who he is?"
That's right. You got a problem with that?
Later, Jesus saw the healed man in the temple and said to him, "Listen, don't sin or something worse might happen to you."
Worse than being sick for 38 years? Worse than watching everybody else get healed instead of me?
Yes, much worse. Turn away from sin or you'll regret it forever.
The healed man then went back to the Pharisees. He told them, "It was Jesus who told me to carry my sleeping bag around."
The Pharisee went to Jesus and said, "You shouldn't help people on the day of rest."
Jesus just sighed and said, "Why doesn't anybody appreciate a good miracle anymore?"
The Pharisee persisted. "You shouldn't help people on the day of rest."
Jesus replied, I know, I heard you. Well, it might be a day of rest for you, but my dad is at work and so am I."
"Your dad?"
"Yeah, my dad, God."
"What?" The Pharisee didn't want to listen to Jesus say things like that. They wanted to kill him because he claimed to be God's son.
And all of this happened near that pool.
Where the angel made the waters all swirly.
Whirly, swirly, curl and twirly. If you're hurt, jump in a hurry. If you're lame or deaf or sick, the first one in gets healed up quick. Go, Jesus!
So the healed man said to the Pharisees, "You want a piece of me?"
And the Pharisee said, "Follow our rules or else."
And both missed out on the joy of celebrating Jesus' miracle.
But we won't. Will we?
Go, Jesus!
Woo!
The end. for me in this scripture is, do you want to get well? Who likes to be sick? Anybody here love being sick? Cold, flu, food poisoning, or worse, like some people we just talked about prayer time, cancer? Does anyone like to be sick? And if you were to become sick, or if you are sick, would you prefer to be well? I mean, yes. I can think of a few instances where people have faked being sick in order to maybe get out of doing something that they don't want to do, like get off a day of work or a day of school. Remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Ferris didn't want to go to school, so he fakes a terrible cold and oh, my throat. And he somehow got the temperature to his mother was so concerned about him. But once his parents left, suddenly all his symptoms were gone and he was out singing on a parade. Having the day of his life. Or then there's the story about 3 guys who were out fishing on a lake. And Jesus comes walking across this lake and joins them in the boat. And they were just shocked. And finally, the first guy goes to Jesus. Jesus, I've suffered from back pain since I took shrapnel in the Vietnam War. Can you help me? And Jesus said, of course, my son. And he touched the man's back and he felt relief for the first time in years. Now the second guy wore very thick glasses and had a hard time reading and driving and asked if Jesus could do something about his sight. And Jesus smiled and took the man's glasses and threw them in the water. And as soon as the glasses hit the water, his eyes cleared and he could see. So Jesus turns to the third man and he goes, don't touch me, I'm on disability. In our story today, Jesus is dealing with real people, with real pain. People would come every day to this pool to win the pool lottery. They would come and be brought by family members or friends or a merciful neighbor or something. And since they had no means of income, they'd be fed by the mercy of those who would share with the outcasts of society. Hundreds of people would be there with every kind of disease. The blind, how are they going to see when the waters get stirred? The deaf, how are they going to hear what's going on? The lame, how are they going to even get to the water? Young, old, women, men, children. What would we smell? Can you imagine what this place must have been like? Have you ever been to a place where people are sick and dying and they spend a lot of time? I hate to say it, but I've been to some nursing homes that were not well cared for. Can you relate to the smell that might have been around this pool? And remember, it's hot there a lot. And the air is still, and the stench in the air. What would we hear? Sounds of people crying out in pain, crying out in hunger, crying out for mercy. And in the middle of this scene, Jesus walks in. He walks through this part of a town many people probably avoided. After all, who wants to be around a group of sick, smelly, complaining people? Would we? Would we like to spend time in an uncomfortable place? Jesus did a lot. Jesus was often found in the place of those kind of people. Whether it was sickness or whether it was people who were socially unacceptable. He went to places the average person would avoid. Why? Because he loves not just the healthy and the rich and the socially secure and those with high-paying jobs, those with good reputations. He loves everybody. He loves the rich and the poor, the billionaire and the beggar, the doctor and the person dying of AIDS, the model family of 4 and the single parent with 5 kids. The driver and the one having to use one of our bicycles. The world-class athlete and this poor invalid laying here at this pool of Bethsaida. 38 years he's been laying around this pool. Think about that. 1982 is 38 years ago. Gas was $1.02. The savings and loan crisis began where? Right here in Oklahoma. USA Today published its first newspaper. The Sony 19-inch color TV, $499. 19 inches. Now you can buy a 60-inch for that. Trivial Pursuit debuted in the United States, and the game Phase 10 came out. I don't even remember a time when Phase 10 wasn't around. Michael Jackson's Thriller album was released. And on TV we had MASH and Benson and Knight Rider, Charlie's Angels and Fantasy Island. And this one will date it. The Late Night with David Letterman that followed Johnny Carson's Tonight Show on NBC debuted. Does that seem like a lifetime ago? Well, for Jesus, it was a lifetime. 38 years is longer than Jesus would have been alive at this point. And this fella had been coming for 38 years. Rain or shine, he got to this place of hope. But after 38 years, how much hope can you have? We don't know if he slept there in the night or not. He came with a hope of being healed, but after this length of time, you can understand why he would be bitter. And so when Jesus asked him, do you want to get well? My guess is his response would be something like, what? Are you kidding me? Do I want to get well? Are you seriously asking me this? No, I just come out here for the fun. Look around. What a great place to hang out. I'm here with my invalid friends. You know, blind Bart's wandering around over there. Lame Leroy's on his spot over there. Deaf Demetrius, who he never comes when you call him. We're all here having a great time. Yes, I want to get well. But that's not what the man says. He's bitter. He's been waiting for 38 years to get his chance to get in the water. Waiting for somebody to help him instead of helping themselves. Can you imagine his feelings when somebody says, the water's moving, get in. And he can't move. By himself, he can't get to the water. He might try to get in, maybe rolls or drags himself or something, but somebody always beats him. A blind person can walk, a deaf person can walk, someone with a broken arm can walk, but even if you had leprosy, you could walk. But he can't. And somebody always beats him. And Jesus says, do you want to get well? Is that an insensitive question? But Jesus doesn't ask dumb questions, does he? He said something for a reason. He had an answer for his years of suffering. He had an answer for all the times he wanted to get in. But he wanted this man to think for a minute. Do you really want to get well? You know, imagine what happens when Jesus heals him. He's been living as an invalid for 38 years. He's probably become pretty used to it. He gets free handouts by those who pass by. Some good days, some bad. Doesn't have to work. But if he gets healed, he's got to go find a job. If he were to be well, he'd just be like everybody else. Nothing special anymore. Even though being sick doesn't feel real special. Maybe he wants to be sick. Maybe he likes things the way they are. Maybe he's come to the time in his life when he's just used to it. And when Jesus says, get up, pick up your mat and walk, and he's cured immediately, he can get up and walk. He's completely healed. And he's walking mat under arm. 38 years of suffering are gone in an instant. 38 years of complaining. But suddenly, he's walking around now, and somebody else gets interested in him. The Jews, probably the Pharisees, the experts in religion guys of the day, see that this guy's doing work on the Sabbath, and that's a no-no. What do you think you're doing? You're forbidden to walk around with your mat on the Sabbath. Have these guys not noticed that he's walking? He hasn't done that in 38 years. Obviously, they don't spend much time at this place. Or they might have recognized him. No, they nitpick at the little things of you're breaking the rules. And his reply, I'm just doing what I was told. This guy, I can't tell you who, told me to get up and take my mat and walk. So here I am, here I go. How sad that the first people that he runs into after he's healed turn on him. How sad when someone has great news and somebody has to find a way to bring them down. Nobody else rejoices, and he doesn't seem to rejoice either. He was made whole, but he gave no thanks. In fact, he didn't seem to have any gratitude whatsoever. Can we see ourselves there sometimes? When the question comes up, do you want to get well? What is our answer? Sometimes it's easier, like the guy in the boat story, to say, no, 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 I'm on disability. I'm used to how I am. I don't want to change now. People who work in the field of addiction and recovery are very familiar with this sort of subconscious resistance. Whatever it is that people are trying to give up is easily named, but oh, so hard to let go of. You know, I love how Paul put it. He said, I don't understand my own actions, for I do not what I want to do, but do the very things I hate to do. A wise person said, the other side of I can't is God can. And there lies the turning point. You know, with the 12-step programs, one of the first things you've got to realize is you've got to turn this over. But you can't do it yourself. Christ is knocking at the door of our hearts, and Jesus says, do you want to get well? And the moment we heed the call to get up our mat and walk is the moment that we know that it's going to be okay. Because as hopeless as life seems sometimes, with grief and illness, with depression and addiction, when we've got God in our lives, when we've got a family of believers to help support us, we know that we can conquer those things. But you can't do it alone. The resurrection happens in our lives, and even when our bodies are crippled and our souls are down. Resurrection can happen by coming together and sharing God's love with one another. And nothing will ever be the same. So let's wade in the water. Jesus is a swirling it for us. Yeah. Go Jesus! Woo! Amen.